This is the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brody Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching and publishing services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brody, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Stacey Kehoe, who is currently writing her first book about digital marketing. Stacey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul. I'm really pleased to be here.
You ready to get started?
I sure am.
All right, question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
My best piece of advice, well, I actually found the process of approaching writing my book really overwhelming. So the best piece of advice I can give is mapping out your book. So I did a little exercise where I just used a bunch of post-it notes and wrote down all the different things that I thought I would want to teach or educate people on who were going to be reading my book. So what would be interesting to them. And I just kind of spat them all out onto post-it notes, stuck them all over a desk, and just got it all out of my head. And I found that actually helped to give me some structure as to how I was going to approach writing the book. So that was the first part of it for me. I then basically rearranged all of those little post-its and I wrote the contents page to my book first, which I can't tell you how much that actually helped the entire writing process, because again, it just gave me that structure. And I'm a fairly creative person. I don't necessarily like following the rules or going in a specific order or anything like that. So I found that as I was writing my book, I could just pick out one of those subjects, write a chapter on it, and it didn't necessarily have to go in the order that it would end up being in my book. I just wrote little bits as I was inspired to write them, really. From there, I just sort of got stuck in. And I think a good piece of advice is really just figure out what works well for you. I tried, blocking out 2 to 3 hours of time a day to try to write, chapters of the book. That just didn't work for me. I found there were too many distractions around, either at the office or if I was doing it from home. So what I ended up doing was actually getting really regimented, doing a 5 a.m. start. And I just agreed to do that from Monday to Friday for a solid 30 days, 5 a.m. start, and just write for 1 hour. So within 30 days, I had a little over 20,000 words, and that was a really good chunk towards actually writing the book. So I think it's just about finding the right process. I also aligned myself with an accountability group. So I found a group of people who were also writing the book at the same time, and that was really motivational for me. It really, really did help. So I would definitely give that piece of advice as well, to just find somebody that you can buddy up with, share your troubles with or your challenges with. But then also hold each other accountable to, a certain word count that you want to accomplish every day or every week. So those are a couple of things that really worked well for me.
Well, you bring up a couple of great points, and I love the fact that you mentioned about the different chapters in your book and about writing, and not necessarily writing them in order, but writing about the ones that you're most passionate about. That's one thing I talk about with my clients is if you're not fired up about writing about chapter 1, then go to the one chapter that you're most passionate about and start writing and get those creative juices flowing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice, because, for somebody who doesn't, sometimes you're just not inspired to write about whatever, there's certain elements throughout the book where you do get a little bit bogged down and you're just not particularly motivated about a specific part of it. And I think just being able to go with the flow and go where the writing takes you, I think is a perfect strategy.
Well, especially with digital marketing, because it's such a broad area. I have a strategic partner here in Arlington who I work with. They're digital marketers, and it's so amazing all the different things with building websites, with SEO, search engine optimization, with using different social media brands, hashtags, and all those different areas. There's just so many things that you can talk about.
Absolutely. I think the thing is that one challenge, I guess, that came up for me was deciding how do I even approach digital marketing, because it constantly changes. There's always new things coming out, and I'm conscious that I don't want my book to date really quickly. So one thing that I spent a lot of time on in the early stages when I was doing that brainstorm session and writing on the post-its was really thinking about methodology that can be applied to a digital marketing strategy, rather than, these are the top tricks for Instagram right now, or here are the top hacks for Twitter hashtags. It's very much about methodology and how to apply that to your marketing campaign rather than specifically, how to do these very on trend type of tasks, I suppose you'd say.
Well, and you're the first guest we've had on the show that has also talked about accountability groups, and I love that because I always think of the 300 movie that came out a number of years back, and those guys had to be extremely fit to play those parts, and they were all working out together, egging each other on, and it's that same concept where instead of molding your body, you're molding your mind, and having that accountability and having that support group makes such a difference to get those results that you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved my accountability group. We were fantastic. We were tough on each other. We really got everybody to pitch in and tell us exactly what they wanted to achieve that particular week. And then we were tough on them to kind of get caught up if they fell behind. And I thought that sort of thing just was so helpful for me because I can get distracted easily. So I did find, having somebody that was really counting on me to have it done was perfect. And then it just meant that we were all finishing our books around the same time too. And later on, they actually ended up becoming some of my beta readers. So they were able to read it and provide me some feedback on, areas that I could improve.
Well, the nice thing, too, is you can also have them help out with reviews and help promote your books, and you can do the same for them. It's a great partnership that you can have with having those accountability groups.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, let's transition to the flip side, and that is, what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published so far for you?
All right. Well, obviously, I'm not published yet, Paul, so I'm still going through that process. I am using a hybrid publisher, so I found a really fantastic company that I'm excited about, and I have a really great editor who's taking care of me, helping me to plan out that whole process. For me, there was that conversation about, do I self-publish or, how do I go about doing this? And I think I just kind of looked at, what do I enjoy doing? I'm not, a very detail-orientated person, and obviously getting a book published is really tough. There's millions of things to think about. The list is endless. And I just thought, I don't want to put myself through that stress. I just want to get stuck in, get the book finished, and then I just want to partner with somebody who I feel really confident with that can help me to get that published. So I had a meeting with them. We did a few planning sessions together, and then they've sort of helped me along the way every time I've had sort of questions or challenges that I've run into, just helped to keep me motivated. And that's been really, really great. So yeah, I mean, I'm not, as I say, hardest part about getting published, not quite published yet, but hopefully well on the way. Essentially where I'm at in my journey now is have written the book, have done the first edit, has gone out to my beta readers who have also provided me feedback. So I've done a second edit, and now it is currently with my editor who is doing the first grammatical and spelling and all that kind of edit for me.
So many steps, isn't it?
So many steps.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you are planning to use in your book launch that you feel is going to work well.
Okay. So, well, obviously I work in digital marketing, so that's playing a really big role for me. So the plan that I have in place right now is very much around social media. So far, I've done things like I'm sharing my progress in terms of what, my writing progress, where I'm at, telling people that I'm writing a book, communicating that to my clients, to my friends, to basically anybody that I ever meet, and just keeping people informed of what's happening. And the reason that I've chosen to do that is that when I do get published and my book is finally available for sale, I want to be able to leverage that sort of following that I've built. So utilizing things like Facebook groups. So I've found a couple of Facebook groups that I'm really excited about. Some of them are business orientated because that's my audience. I'm looking for small businesses that are looking for digital marketing advice. So I found a few Facebook groups. I've embedded myself in that. Currently, I'm not, asking for things or trying to sell anything or anything like that. I'm just leveraging the group, trying to give as much advice and, freebie type feedback and just, building relationships inside of those groups so that when the time comes, I'm probably about 12 weeks away from being published now. When the time comes and I do, wish to promote what I'm doing, that I've sort of built up a bit of a following there that can help me to then also promote the book. So social media is going to play a big role for me. I've started pitching myself to a lot of podcasts, media, journalists. I'm talking to a lot of, signed up to Harrow, help a reporter out, Source Bottle. There's quite a few different PR publications. I'm just keeping an eye out for different media outlets that are looking for authors or that are looking for people that are, producing content or whatever. And I'm just pitching myself really to say, this is what I'm doing, this is what's coming out. And I'm starting to get, a few interviews on different blogs and different journalist sites and things like that. So those are a couple of the things that I've been doing leading up to the launch of the book. And I'm sure there's much more to come once I get closer to the date.
Well, and you bring some great points up, talking about giving value to these Facebook groups, not just buy my book or download my book. Hey, this is what I've learned, or this is what I can offer. Because it does work. It's one of those things where you give, and then just how karma works, it's going to come back in a good way. But you're absolutely right. If you're just like, buy my book, nobody wants to be that person, or no one's going to support that person in the group. So you bring up a great point about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, again, I work in digital marketing. I run some Facebook and LinkedIn groups, and there's nothing more annoying than somebody just jumping into the group and pitching what they have. That's not a good way to build business or to get a result. So it's very much about nurturing and just developing those relationships. It's much better for me to be in a small group of, a couple of hundred business owners, really get them to understand who I am, what I'm all about, so that, and if I'm offering that value and support to them and giving them advice on digital marketing, as soon as, the book comes out on digital marketing and how they can implement those processes, it's just a really easy transition, or at least that's the goal.
Well, another strategy that's been brought to my attention recently, I had a guest on last week, and he was talking about how he utilizes trade magazines, kind of like what you touched on, and really reaching out to those ones that cover those specific areas like digital marketing, and then repurposing part of the book or offering additional advice, and then customize an article to that magazine, and they've been able to utilize that with the book launch.
Yeah, that's a fantastic technique. I will be stealing that.
Well, I was a teacher for 9 years, so I always say the best teachers are the best thieves.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about your favorite book. And what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
I think my favorite book is probably 24 Assets by Daniel Priestley. I learned from reading that book that in order to scale a business, you have to have tangible assets that you can leverage. And that was a big motivation for me writing the book. I knew that once I had a book, there's a lot of work that goes into it. So far, the hours I've had to pour into producing, to writing the book, and then there's going to be countless hours of editing. I'm sure there's going to be more now that it's with my editor. And there's a whole process that has to go through in terms of getting published. So there's a lot of work that goes in up front with a book, and it takes a long time to see a result. You don't really get a result until it's launched, and hopefully it does well, and you sort of get the, leverage it off the back of that. So one thing I really loved about the book 24 Assets was it talked about producing an asset like a book. So that was a big motivation for me to write the book. He has a kind of saying like, prolific, not perfect. And that was really helpful to me as well. That was a big takeaway from the book, because it just meant that, as you're writing, when I was writing my book, rather than focusing on, oh my gosh, I have to have this perfect book and it has to be 100%, perfect before I can even publish. It's like, let's just get 85 to 90% of the way and then let the professional editors do their part and then get it out. Having a published book is better than having 80% of the book actually written, but never actually published, So that was a big takeaway for me, was just prolific, not perfect. Just get it out there, let it do its work, and you can leverage that to try to build more assets into your business.
Absolutely. One of the phrases we've used in this show many times is done is better than perfect. Just do it.
That's it. Yeah, I've heard you say it before. I think it's brilliant advice.
Well, let's talk about your favorite quote. So for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote is actually a Walt Disney one. If you can dream it, you can do it. It's so simple, and I know it's overused a little bit, but the thing that I love about that quote is I try not to get too bogged down in the how to do things. I like to dream things, So what if I was to write a book and it was to get published and it was to get to #1 bestseller? Rather than worrying about how to do that or getting bogged down in all of that detail, it's really just ask the question, what if? I love that. And I think that, if you can dream something, there is a way to do it. So I think that quote from Walt Disney, if you can dream it, you can do it, is just really motivational for any business owner.
I like it. That's actually the first time we've heard that quote on the show. It's an excellent choice.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Stacey, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
The best way, a couple of different ways. Visit my website. So my business is Brand Lective Communication. So the website is www.brandlective.com. That's brandlective.com. Or find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. That's where I'm most prolific. If you just search for my name, Stacey Kehoe, that's about Kehoe, and reach out to me via social media.
Well, Stacey, I want to thank you again for being a guest on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
I appreciate that, Paul. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.